Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday the 23rd of May. I'm Andrew Wilson and this is Scotland at 7. This evening I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 89 of the illegal Russian invasion. Then I'll introduce our guest for this evening, and then we will take a look together at today's headlines from Scotland and around the world. A Ukrainian court has sentenced a Russian soldier to life in prison for killing an unarmed civilian in the first war crimes trial arising from Russia's 24th February invasion. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister, Andriy Rudenko, has said that Moscow would be prepared to go back to peace negotiations when the leadership in Kyiv demonstrates a constructive response. The Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, said last night that 50 to 100 Ukrainians were dying every day on the war's eastern front, in what appeared to be a reference to military casualties. The heaviest fighting is focused around the twin cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk in the Luhansk area, one of the two regions that make up the Donbass. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has warned that Russian soldiers would have to be alert to terrorist attacks after the Russian-appointed mayor of the occupied city of Enerhodar in southern Ukraine was injured in an explosion on Sunday. President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for maximum sanctions against Russia in an address to the World Economic Forum in Davos. Zelensky suggested the rebuilding could be partly funded from finding Russian assets hidden overseas, freezing them, and then allocating them to a special fund to help those hurt by the war. Russia's death toll from its war on Ukraine is akin to the losses suffered in its war in Afghanistan, the UK Ministry of Defence has said. In the first 3 months since Russia invaded Ukraine, it is likely to have suffered a similar death toll to that experienced by the Soviet Union in its 9-year war in Afghanistan, the MOD has claimed. Russia is concentrating its efforts on assaults on the eastern Ukrainian city of Severodonetsk and the nearby town of Toshkivka, the Ukrainian military has said in its latest operational report. Olyana Zelenska has given a rare interview with her husband Volodymyr Zelensky, only their second public appearance together since Russia launched its invasion. She recounts the anxiety and stupor she felt on 24 February and says that even though she has barely seen her husband since, no one, not even the war, could take him away from her. Technicians linked to the Syrian military's infamous barrel bombs that have wreaked devastation across much of that country have been deployed to Russia to help potentially prepare for a similar campaign in the Ukraine war, European officials believe. Intelligence officers say that more than 50 specialists have been in Russia for several weeks, working alongside officials from President Vladimir Putin's military. The Polish president, Andrzej Duda, became the first foreign leader to address the Ukrainian parliament in person since the invasion began, backing Ukraine's stance on territorial concessions and warning the international community that ceding any territory to Russia would be a huge blow to the entire West. And YouTube has taken down more than 70,000 videos and 9,000 channels related to the war in Ukraine for violating content guidelines, including removal of videos that refer to the invasion as a liberation mission. Now, we're lucky enough to be joined this evening by Chris McCusker. Chris is a carer, a disabilities activist, a trades unionist, and a humanitarian aid worker. Buenas noches, Chris. How are you? ¿Cómo estás?
Muy buen, muy buen.
I'm delighted to hear it and delighted that you're able to come back and join us on Broadcasting Scotland this evening, Chris. It's great to see you.
Excellent. I'm feeling good, Andrew, and looking forward to the show.
That's grand. Now, a court in Kyiv has sentenced a Russian soldier to life in prison for the killing of a Ukrainian civilian, in the first verdict in a trial related to war crimes carried out by the Russian army during its invasion of Ukraine. Vadim Shishimarin, a 21-year-old sergeant, was found guilty of killing 62-year-old Alexander Shelipov in the Sumy region during the first days of the invasion. The verdict was delivered on Monday by the judge, Sergei Ahafonov, at a packed courtroom with dozens of Ukrainian and foreign television cameras crammed into the small courtroom. The judge said that although Shishimarin cooperated with the investigation and expressed remorse, the court could not accept his claim that he had not meant to kill Shelipov when he fired at him. Shishimarin, wearing a grey and blue hoodie, listened with his head bowed to the judge deliver his long verdict from inside the glass box for defendants. He was given a translation of the judge's words from Ukrainian into Russian by a court-appointed translator. This is the first in a number of war crime cases that Ukraine prosecutors want to try as quickly as possible. Ukraine's Prosecutor General, Irina Venediktova, has said that she is preparing more than 40 cases related to war crimes that could come to trial soon, and Ukrainian authorities say that they have registered more than 10,000 war crimes across the country. Trying cases so quickly while the conflict is still ongoing is extremely unusual and may violate elements of the Geneva Conventions, some legal experts say. However, Ukraine has made swift justice a priority, partly as a warning to Russian troops still occupying parts of the country that they may face justice for any crimes they commit. Prosecutors said that Shishimarin was in a car with other Russian soldiers, one of whom ordered him to shoot Shelipov, as he had been a witness to them shooting at the car and then stealing it. So, Chris, firstly, is this a reflection of another aspect of warfare in a digital age? Prosecutions for war crimes, and in this case a conviction, can be pursued and completed much more quickly when you've got the digital footprints of where people are from their mobile phones and the availability of video and other footage which can be shared almost instantaneously.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, technology has advanced in leaps and bounds, you know, in the last half century, and it's fairly useful, as we've seen in this case, to bring people to justice where clearly a war crime has been committed. I would like to see this rolled out. Other countries use it as well. Obviously, I'm thinking about Palestine here, but you know, any country that can bring about these court cases as swiftly as Ukraine, it will send that final message basically to the oppressors, as that nobody is above the law, and where they're caught, they're going to be swiftly dealt with.
Well, that's a good question, Chris. Do you think that the possibility of capture, public trial with dozens of Ukrainian and foreign television cameras crammed into your court and then conviction for life, do you think that might begin to play on the minds of some of the young Russian soldiers now deployed in Ukraine?
Well, yeah, it may do, and I hope it does. You know, up till now, we've been hearing anecdotal evidence of willful destruction of weapons and arms by some of the Russian soldiers. That, so far as I'm aware, is non-collaborative reporting. And obviously, the Ukrainians would use that as propaganda, and the Russians wouldn't like to comment on it, shall we say. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's a difficult war for any of the participants, you know, regardless of what age they are. You know, it is essentially, to me, I think it's a war of conscience. And you know, the Ukrainian soldiers are doing it out of you know, a conscience, obviously, of the, you know, to protect their own nation, you know, protect their rights and their values, And the oppressors, obviously, the Russians, they're basically demanding and mandating their conscripts to do, Vladimir Putin's bidding. And if the orders from above, get trickled down, people, have to do, what they're told to do, because they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they don't carry out the orders from their superiors, there's repercussions from that. And if they have, an attack of moral consciousness, then they could also face the wrath of the Ukrainian fighters as well.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you. We'll look at the situation in Ukraine from another perspective now, because, as I mentioned, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged the West to intensify its economic sanctions against Russia, as he said business leaders in Davos needed to decide whether brute force should rule the world. In a keynote video address to the World Economic Forum, Zelensky called for a full oil embargo, the severing of Russian banks from the global financial system, the complete isolation of the Russian IT sector, and a ban on trade with Russia. Ukraine's president called for the implementation of maximum sanctions against Vladimir Putin's regime and said there would be no point to Davos if Russian aggression was allowed to prevail. Noting that history was at a turning point, Zelensky said, "This is really the moment when it is decided whether brute force will rule the world." Zelensky received a standing ovation and concluded his 45-minute session at the Economic Forum by sending out a collective message to business leaders, telling them that they should wake up each morning with the feeling, "What have I done for Ukraine today?" Russia's absence from this year's Davos gathering has provided Ukraine with an opportunity to make its case for a stepping up of the West's economic war against Russia, with Zelensky's team of ministers at the World Economic Forum all urging tougher action. So, Chris, firstly, is President Zelensky right when he says that the world now has to decide whether brute force can once more dominate the planet?
Yeah, I think it is a stark warning, because while Russia is flexing its military power, in all shape and manner of means, the only thing that is going to curtail Vladimir Putin's attempts to how can we say, overthrow the Ukrainian government, which is really what he wants to do, and reclaim the area, is that the sanctions are I firmly believe that the governments, including the British government, including France, most of Europe, I think they could do a lot more. Whether they can do it a lot quicker, I don't know. But I think they can do an awful lot more. And it is a natural course of action to pursue whilst Vladimir Putin is not willing to engage in any meaningful dialogue as to a possible resolution. So if you can't cut the head off of the serpent, you've at least got to try and weaken it.
Thanks, Chris. That's a good way of putting it. We'll move on now to a Scottish story, because a new temporary timetable with reduced service came into operation across the ScotRail network from today. ScotRail say the timetable change was necessary as a result of the ongoing impact of a significant number of drivers declining to make themselves available for overtime or rest day working, following an announcement by the drivers' union ASLEF that it will ballot for industrial action over pay. Train operators across Britain have relied on drivers working overtime or on their rest days, and train drivers have been able to refuse overtime or rest day working going back to the pre-privatisation days of British Railways. In 2019, ScotRail committed to employing more drivers to phase out the reliance on this practice. However, the pandemic meant that driver training was significantly delayed. There has been concern from the travelling public that the new timetable will affect people's ability to get to and from work, and with earlier times for the last train services, nighttime industry and entertainment venues are concerned that their businesses will suffer as a consequence. It is understood that informal talks between ScotRail and ASLEF are planned for tomorrow, with formal talks planned for Thursday. So, Chris, ScotRail and the travelling public are in this position because there aren't enough drivers. And in part, that's because training more or less stopped during the pandemic. You couldn't have two people in the cab of a train. And of course, because the drivers' union would like another increase on to drivers' £50,000 a year wages. Now, I understand completely that the trade union is there to represent its members and to get the best for them that it can. But do you think, is the union going to start to run into challenges when its members are, by any measure, already well paid? And even worse, there's a risk that they start to become pawns at the hands of the Tory spin doctors. And I probably mean Tories both red and blue, and possibly beige as well.
Yeah, and everybody of, shall we say, a unionist persuasion, and I use the word unionist in inverted commas, it will naturally jump onto this dispute because of the fact that it's a handy tool to hit the Scottish Government over the head with, seeing as how they're only a month into their tenure of bringing the railways back into public ownership, which is something actually that the Labour Party have been calling for a long time, let's not forget. So now that the Scottish Government have actually done it, it seems certain unions, and I won't mention them, are angling themselves up to be the champions of the current dispute, which is kicked off just now. This dispute, I have to say, is being very much engineered by ASLEF in London. This is not unique to Scotland. Train drivers in London are also in a grievance with their bosses and owners. And it's the exact same situation in Wales. I don't know what the script is in Northern Ireland. So it's not unique to Scotland. And it's not just because the Scottish Government have taken over the railways. That much I have to point out. This would have been an inevitable factor had Abellio still been in charge. And, it is quite right to point out the fact that the pandemic has curtailed an awful lot of driver training. And also we need to add into the fact that sadly some drivers have actually died of COVID, sadly. And also some drivers have taken early retirement, which has obviously left the schedule short. But that's, again, we can draw similarities here as well to most of the transport sector, including the aviation industry, where an awful lot of the aviation workers were paid off and laid off through naturalisation of the fact that COVID was actually the major driving down factor on that sector. So that sector in itself is still very much in a point of recovery. The staff are still very much in a point of recovery. And whilst it is almost certainly legitimate for unions to campaign for better wages for their members and better conditions and all the rest of it, they have to take into cognizance is the fact that because they are now public service, this would have a knock-on effect to other public services in Scotland, and it's just unsustainable to roll out the same pay awards across the board.
Thanks, Chris. I was going to ask you about the Labour Party's broader perspective on this, uh, thinking back to 2004 when the Labour government in Scotland could have ended the ScotRail franchise and taken it back into public hands. However, there is quite a lot of news this evening, and we're really tight for time. So what I'll do is I'll leave that thought with you, and we'll carry it over to the next conversation, because I suspect you and I are going to be talking about trains again very, very soon. But let's move to our next story this evening, which is that in an about face this afternoon, 10 Downing Street admitted that it had been Boris Johnson who had requested the meeting with civil servant Sue Gray to discuss her Partygate report. The admission followed 2 days of government ministers briefing the media that it had been Sue Gray who had requested the meeting. The admission came shortly before new photographs obtained by ITV showing Boris Johnson raising a glass of wine in front of a table strewn with bottles at the leaving do of a senior aide, an event for which the Metropolitan Police decided not to issue the Prime Minister with a fixed penalty notice, were released. In the photos, Boris Johnson is shown holding a glass of wine as others raise their glasses, as well as appearing to give a speech. The event on the 13th of November 2020 was to mark the departure of his head of communications, Lee Kane. Johnson has denied in the House of Commons that an event took place on that date. Commenting on the new pictures released of the Prime Minister drinking at a Downing Street party during lockdown, the SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford MP said, "These pictures clearly show, as the police investigation concluded, that parties did indeed take place at Downing Street during lockdown, and that the Prime Minister was there. It is sickening." Boris Johnson told us firstly that no parties took place during lockdown. Then he said he wasn't at them, and that he was angry about them. He is a serial liar and cannot be allowed to get away with it. It is truly a disgrace that Tory MPs are keeping him in Downing Street, he continued. Johnson demeans the office that he holds. It is time for them to do the decent thing for once and get rid of him. This charlatan should be an ex-Prime Minister by now. So, Chris, firstly, is this confusion and contradiction that we saw and heard on our screens and on our radios this morning yet more evidence that the spin machine in Downing Street is completely out of control? They can't even agree on and stick to a lie between them over a couple of hours nowadays.
No, and the unfortunate thing is about lying is that when you lie, you actually need to make up a lie in order to cover up the lie that you've already made. And then when you tell the truth about lying and you lie about telling the truth, then it really gets beyond confusing. One thing leads to another, and you have to tell a lie in order to cover up some other lie from months, weeks, possibly even years ago. So what we're now seeing is the fact that there is a last gasp attempt to save Big Dog, and Johnson is doing as much as he can, and his cohort are constantly wheeled out over weekend television in order to try and defend this so-called meeting, which he firmly states that he did not instigate in any such way, shape, or form, which I think that's a lie to start with. What he wants to do is he has fronted it out so far by saying that the Sue Gray report will be aired, it will be unredacted, and it will be there for all to see. Now he's absolutely, shall we say, bricking it, because the images that are apportioned to the Sue Gray report are the most damning. But even at their most damnedest, Boris Johnson will still flat it out, and he will still refuse to go. That is the mark of the man. That is the cut of his jib. What the Tory party want to do at all costs is remain in power.
Of
Simple as
course,
that.
Chris. Of course. Now, very quickly, Ian Blackford described the Prime Minister as a charlatan. And after the photographs appeared, the SNP MP for Airdrie and Shotts, Anam Kazar, tweeted that Boris has lied and lied, yet is still in power. What a bloody disgrace. Her words, not mine. Do you think that the perspective that the SNP, for example, are putting forward, do you think that voters and people generally are going to share that perspective, or are, as Tories are suggesting, people are now bored with the story and want to move on?
I think actually the Tories have won. I think that people are bored, absolutely out their tree with this whole affair, and have grown apathetic to the outcome of it. And because we're now in this cost of living crisis, and obviously we're still in the fallout of Brexit, which is compounding the general day-to-day living of every person, every constituent. They just want things to get fixed. They're not caring about parties. They're not caring about who broke the law. They just want government to operate. And, they don't see that if government is changed in any shape, way, or fashion, that will just add to the chaos that we're currently in. So I think the public have grown apathetic to it. Not the Scottish public. The Scottish public are still up in arms about it, but I think generally the voting public down in England just want all this to go away, and let's get back to work. Work. Boris Johnson, work. That'll be a laugh.
So it'll be a laugh or something. You're absolutely right, Chris. Thank you. But we'll move on to our next story now, because the former Conservative MP Imran Ahmed Khan has been sentenced to 18 months in jail for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy after plying him with gin at a party in 2008. The 48-year-old was expelled from the Conservative Party and later resigned from the Commons, triggering a by-election in Wakefield, West Yorkshire, after he was convicted last month following a trial at Southwark Crown Court. The judge said that Khan should serve 18 months, half on custody, released on licence for the remainder of the term, subject to recall should you commit a further offence. The court heard that Khan had plied the boy with gin and tonic before taking him upstairs to watch pornography and groping him in a bunk bed. Although the 15-year-old did not pursue the allegation at the time, he returned to police when he discovered that Khan was standing as an MP in the 2019 general election. So, Chris, sentencing Ahmed Khan, the judge said, "I do not accept you have remorse. Rather, the only regret you feel is towards yourself for having found yourself in the predicament you face as a result of your actions." So is Ahmed Khan's abject lack of contrition or regret, is that consistent with a lot of other things we've seen from the Tory cabinet? They're only ever sorry when they get caught.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, I'm going to be very partisan here and say that it's not solely restricted to the Conservative Party. There's been allegations within the Labour Party. There's been allegations even within the SNP Party, and I believe there is investigations going on in all parties regarding this. And I firmly believe, as a Republican socialist, no one is above reproach here. And when it comes down to events of a sexual nature, if you are elected to office, if an allegation is brought to that, you should be immediately suspended. And if found guilty, that office should be taken away from you and it should be put up for ballot. And that goes for every party. It goes for every country. It's a shocking it's a shocking way to treat vulnerable people, to abuse your position, your gifted elitist position, and use it in such manner, uh, especially against vulnerable teenagers. To actually think that you can get away with something in that in this day and age, it just smacks of everything that we've come to know and report more and more in recent years. I mean, everybody. Well, you and I are of an age. We can. Well, I can still remember the Perfumo affair. I think you were there, Andrew. And we can all remember. The horrible allegations that were made towards people at Cyril Smith and all the rest of it. But now again, when we go back to the original story that we were talking about, with the advent of telecommunications and social media and all the rest of it, we're now seeing that there's front benchers actually watching pornography on in the front bench. These people are paid to do a job, not watch pornography or ply underage people with drink and and sexually abuse them. So that anybody that partakes in that heinous crime should actually be removed from Parliament as a whole, and their seat should be put up for ballot.
Completely, Chris. Thank you. We'll look at another story now, which is affecting families across Scotland, because the cost of basic goods and services needed by the average two-child household in the UK has risen by £400 a month, according to analysis that suggests families are experiencing faster inflation than official figures indicate. Costs for families with two children have risen by an annual rate of 13%, according to research from Loughborough University. That's faster than the 9% rate of inflation found in official statistics. In itself, those are at a 40-year high. UK households are grappling with a cost of living crisis as prices rise significantly faster than wages, cutting spending power. The SNP's Treasury spokesperson, Alison Thulis MP, has said that if Rishi Sunak doesn't act now, the responsibility for millions of families, children and pensioners struggling to survive, and potential deaths will lie squarely at his feet. It comes after the boss of E.ON UK, the UK's largest energy firm, warned that 40% of its customers could be in fuel poverty by October and called on the UK government to act. Commenting, Alison Thulis said, "We are at the stage now where it is just plain cruel for the Chancellor to be doing nothing to intervene to help severely struggling households through this cost of living crisis, a crisis that has come about through his own Tory government's making." The warnings are coming thick and fast from energy firms, charities, and representatives who are seeing the hardship people are facing on a daily basis. Rich list Rishi is ignoring the millions who are struggling to feed themselves and afford basic necessities. What exactly does the Chancellor need to hear or see happen to make him act? We are beyond crisis point, she continued. Food and fuel poverty is a life and death issue. So, Chris, Peter Matejcik, the Deputy Director of Evidence and Impact at the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who collaborated in this research from Loughborough University, has said that those on the lowest incomes are now facing dangerously high inflation months ahead of the Bank of England's projections, and with no adequate support mechanism to protect their families from harm. The government has the power and can choose to use the benefits system to uprate in line with inflation, he said, ensuring that nobody falls below an income that allows them to afford the basics for themselves and their families. So do you think, is there any chance that Rich List Rishi is going to do what Peter Matejcik suggests?
I don't think so, but then again, I think that Rishi Sunak is mandated by Boris Johnson and the people that are advising Boris Johnson to do to stay on the course that they are currently on at this moment in time. I think all the negative press that Rishi Sunak has been receiving these last few months, whilst very much trying to stay under the radar, is obviously not working for him. I mean, it's absolutely shocking to have a Chancellor of the Exchequer who is actually on the world's rich list. I mean, that's just wrong. And I think, well, I mean, it would be even more wrong if the Chancellor of the Exchequer actually wasn't, a member of the Labour Party. But that's neither here nor there. They've got their own conclavities to do with the fighting the establishment and wishing to be part of the establishment. But we'll leave that one to one side at the moment. The main issue here is the fact that, and I've been saying this consistently, viewers can call me out if they like, but I've been saying this consistently over the last couple of episodes, is the fact that it's a direct policy choice by the Tory party not to act. And they know fine well how families are struggling. They are not as dumb as everybody thinks that they are. So it is a direct policy choice not to stave off or mitigate any of the price increases, and even now it's actually got to the point where energy companies are actually now calling for the government to actually do something, because they can see their own customers are going to be plunged into fuel poverty. Why they couldn't see it 2-3 months ago, God only knows, but that's neither here nor there. Better late to the party than never in respect of Eon. But yes, Alison Thewlis is right. Again, she's been consistent in calling out the government to actually do something and act. And again, I'll remind the viewers in Europe that the French government, the Italian government, the Spanish government, the German government have all made a policy choice to cap the energy rises at 4%. It can be done. The British government have chosen not to do it, and that's why we've seen energy price rises in the region of 52-54%.
Yeah, completely, Chris. Thank you. Let's move on now, because we've got a medical story, because the first case of monkeypox has been confirmed in an individual in Scotland. The individual is receiving care and treatment appropriate to their condition, and contact tracing is underway. Monkeypox is a viral infection usually found in West and Central Africa. The West African strain that has been recently detected in the UK is generally a mild self-limiting illness, spread by very close contact with someone already infected and with symptoms of monkeypox. Most people recover within a few weeks. Public Health Scotland is working with the UK Health Security Agency, Public Health Wales, and Northern Ireland HSE Health Protection Agency to monitor and respond to potential and confirmed cases of monkeypox across the UK. As of Friday the 20th of May, the UK HSE has identified 20 cases in England, but more are expected. Dr. Nick Finn, the Director of Public Health Science and Medical Director at PHS, explains Public Health Scotland is aware of one individual in Scotland who is confirmed to have monkeypox. The affected individual is being managed and treated in line with nationally agreed protocols and guidance. We have well-established and robust infection control procedures for dealing with such cases of infectious disease, and these will be strictly followed. The overall risk to the general public is low. Anyone with an unusual blister-like rash or a small number of blister-like sores on any part of their body, including their genital area, should avoid close contact with others and seek medical advice if they have any concerns. The symptoms of monkeypox include initial symptoms of fever or high temperature, headache, muscle aches, backache, swollen lymph nodes, chills, and exhaustion. A blister-like rash or a small number of blister-like sores can develop, often beginning on the face and then spreading to other parts of the body, including the genital area. The rash changes and goes through different stages before finally forming a scab, which typically falls off over the course of a couple of weeks. Individuals are infectious from the point symptoms start until all the scabs fall off. During this time, close contact with others must be avoided. Earlier today, the United Nations AIDS Agency said that some reporting on the monkeypox virus was racist and homophobic, and warned against exacerbating stigma and undermining the response to the growing outbreak. So, Chris, I was going to ask you if you were worried at all about the messaging today. When The Guardian wrote, most cases are in young men who have sex with men, and some were infected before the case from Nigeria arrived in the country. As the UN fears, is there a risk, do you think, that there may be a homophobic or racist backlash, and also the equal opposite public health problem? People who are not connected with West Africa or are not gay are going to be complacent and not react when they start to show symptoms of this virus.
Yeah, and I'm actually quite worried about the fact that that was reported on The Guardian, which is I would say one of the better trusted English tabloids. Well, not a tabloid, but a broadsheet anyway. But yeah, no, look, I listened interestingly to Professor Linda Bald on this, and as far as I'm concerned, she can do no wrong. So when Linda says, it's not time to worry about this at this moment in time, and it is predominantly a skin-on-skin contact infection. She didn't mention anything about, anybody's sexual orientation. She didn't mention anything about a person's colour or creed or whatever. She said, as you quite rightly pointed out, track and trace has been put into place, and I think we have learned an awful lot about infections over the last 2 years, and I think all the protocols that we have learned and endured will be put into place so that this, hopefully can't spread from this unfortunate individual. Let's just hope that it doesn't manifest itself to worry the people of Scotland unduly. I think it was 25 cases in London, one case in Scotland. If you compare per capita the size of England and the size of Scotland, then it's possibly, pro-rational anyway. But yeah, I think we need to avoid a lot of scare stories about this. It is something that we relatively know very little about, so I would take everything at this moment in time with a pinch of salt, and listen. I would urge people to listen to trusted outlets such as this one that we're currently broadcasting on, and also eminent people such as Professor Linda Bald.
Such as Professor Linda Bald. Absolutely right, Chris. Thank you. And of course, the individual who is receiving treatment for monkeypox in Scotland is in our thoughts, and we hope that they make a speedy and complete recovery as quickly as possible. We'll move on, though, because an historic vote has taken place which will allow Church of Scotland ministers and deacons to marry same-sex couples. The General Assembly today voted to change a standing church law to allow the right to apply to become an authorised celebrant to conduct same-sex ceremonies, and the vote was by 274 votes to 136. The decision, which would enable ministers and deacons to opt in to a new scheme, came after a majority of presbyteries, 29 to 12, approved the solemnisation of same-sex marriage overture. A report to the General Assembly makes it clear that no person would be required to participate in the solemnisation of or be involved in the arrangements for a same-sex marriage unless they explicitly wished to do so. So, Chris, the vote earlier today in the General Assembly was roughly 2-1 in favour of same-sex marriages in the Church of Scotland. Does that Does that voting tell us that there is still work to do to increase equality, or does it tell us something else?
No, I think there's always work to do with regards to equality. I don't think you'll be surprised to hear me saying that. I'm very happy that the Church of Scotland have moved on and have now dragged their clergy and their members into the 21st century, and it is a welcome announcement, which is long overdue. I mean, when we're talking about equality, we're talking about equality in every facet of society. That is what Scotland is striving for, and that's not an awful lot of people can't see when you discuss a vision of an independent Scotland. And you say to people that it's about fairness, it's dignity, it's respect, it's about equality. To my mind, it's also about the share and redistribution of wealth, but that's neither here nor there. It is being, it is allowing everybody to be what they want to be and do what they want to do, where it is not harming another person. We have changed our outlook and our values towards the LGBTI community in so many ways within the last 25, 30 years. And it's been absolutely wonderful. And I think it's now, high time that the Church of Scotland got in step with I wouldn't say the general feeling of the country, but for that section of the community that have felt marginalised for so long, I think it's an absolutely fantastic day for them.
Completely, Chris. I was going to ask you as well about looking at this a little bit, perhaps from the other side of the coin. Maybe I was wondering, do you think this inclusive move, do anything to slow or halt the continuing slide of the Church and the Church of Scotland and religion more generally into irrelevance in most people's lives? The General Assembly's vote comes against a background of steeply declining numbers of church marriages in Scotland and a sharp fall in religious observance generally.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that is a spiraling trend that is not wholly owned by the Church of Scotland. I mean, there's numbers dwindling within the Catholic Church as well, and many other order of faiths, it's people's own choice. I mean, the Catholic Church lost an awful lot of its members through their unfair treatment to the people of the LGBTI community. I know this for a fact. I've often said on this show, I'm all for gay rights and stuff like that. My son is gay, and I would, support anybody who is fighting for equality. And if they are seen to be doing something in order to make themselves more relevant in these days of liberty and equality, then if that's what they have to do in order to make them stay relevant, then that's what they have to do. Maybe the Catholic Church will someday soon follow likewise.
Well, we'll see, Chris, and I'm sure we'll come back to this matter as well as other churches follow the Scottish Episcopal Church, who were first, and now the Church of Scotland as well. But for our final story, we'll go to Washington, because the House Select Committee investigating the January 6 attack on the Capitol is expected now to stage 6 public hearings in June on how Donald Trump and some allies broke the law as they sought to overturn the 2020 election results, according to sources familiar with the inquiries. The hearings are set to be a pivotal political moment for the country as the panel aims to publicly outline the potentially unlawful schemes that tried to keep the former president in office, despite his defeat at the hands of Joe Biden. According to a draft schedule, the Select Committee intends to hold 6 hearings, with the first and last in prime time, where its lawyers will run through how Trump's schemes took shape before the election and culminated with the Capitol attack. We want to paint a picture as clear as possible as to what occurred. The chairman of the Select Committee, Congressman Bernie Thompson, recently told reporters. We just have to show clearly what happened on January 6. The Select Committee has already alleged that Trump violated multiple federal laws to seek to overturn the 2020 election, including obstructing Congress and defrauding the United States. But the hearings where the panel intends to show how they reached those conclusions. According to the draft schedule, the June public hearings will explore Trump's efforts to overturn the election, starting and ending with primetime hearings at 8 p.m. on the 9th and the 23rd. In between, the panel will hold 10 a.m. hearings on the 13th, 15th, 16th, and 21st. The Select Committee appears to be planning for the hearings to be extensive affairs. The primetime hearings are currently scheduled to last between 1.5 and 2 hours, and the morning hearings between 2 and 2.5 hours. So, Chris, the draft schedule suggests that 2 of these hearings will be during prime time for television. Does that suggest that we're going to return to the spectacle of something like McCarthy's Senate hearings in the 50s? And if we do, is that a good thing?
Well, again, you might remember the McCarthy hearings in the 50s. I certainly don't, Andrew. But then I'm only 5 years younger than your good self. So, but no, in all candor, I don't think that these. I fail to see what the mileage can be achieved by screening them on prime time. Are they so desperate for television content that they've got to watch hours and hours of Trump did this and Trump did that and Trump did the next thing? We all know that Trump was was the most crookedest president ever to have been elected to office. Let it play out in the natural way that American courts operate, and deliver as the verdict. They shouldn't be trying to be making money out of this and television ratings and whatnot, what have you. There are people, anoraks, who will sit and watch this for hours and hours and hours, and try and garner any kind of sort of like false narrative in order to sort of like big up Trump, but what it all boils down to is for me it just boils down to sensationalist television, which the Americans have been known for donkey's years.
Thanks, Chris. Well, certainly these hearings taking place in the Capitol, so it's a Senate committee, so it's in a sense it's the Senate going about its daily work, albeit that the events that we saw on the 6th of January 2020 are unprecedented in our times, and I suspect that the hearings into what happened on the 6th of January are similarly going to be unprecedented. So it's whatever happens, it's going to be a pivotal political moment, one way or another. I think that's pretty clear. However, that was our final item this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs, and culture. Please help us continue to make these programmes, to continue to develop the station, and to make new programmes for you. If you would like to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. I should say that it looks like the financial challenges we faced a couple of weeks ago have now been met, so thank you. But the need for financial support never goes away, and we rely entirely upon your financial support. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Broadcasting Scotland and on Twitter at BroadcastScot. Meantime, we will be here tomorrow evening with the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please tune in and join us then. And so that's the way it is at very nearly Scotland at 8. Thank you to Chris McCusker for his time and his contributions this evening. Thanks, Chris.
No, I really appreciated it, Andrew. After my sabbatical in Lanzarote, it's been a welcome addition to my life.
Absolutely. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has been watching us this evening. I hope that you can join us again here soon on Broadcasting Scotland, but in the meantime, bye-bye.